HTML5 has a new feature that allows you to set arbitrary data attributes in any element. Let's take a look at how this works. Make a working copy of data attributes.html. I'm going to call this data attributes-working.html. I'm going to open that in the text editor. You notice up here at the top, I've got some JavaScript in the script element there. And then down here in the body of the document, we've got some HTML that's using these data dash this and that attributes. We'll talk about that in a moment. Let's go ahead and open this in the browser. And you'll notice we've got these lines of text from our HTML. So the way this works is you can basically embed any data that you want in any tag that you want using data dash and whatever you want to call it as the name of the attribute, and then putting whatever you want to in the value of the attribute. So in this case, I've got data-aka, and the white album is the data in the attribute. And this is all wrapped around an A element, a link that says the Beatles. So it says the Beatles recorded an album called The Beatles, and I have this data-aka with the commonly also known as name of the album called the White Album. And if you're a Beatle fan like I am, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So up here in the JavaScript, you'll notice I have a function called aka, and it gets called here in this onClick aka, and this means a reference to the element that has the onClick attribute in it. And basically, I'm just setting up an alert with dataset aka from that element. And so dataset will have these various elements in it, and you notice that it's calling a property called aka, and that is the name after the data dash. And then whatever's after that dash becomes the name of the property in the dataset object. So if we come over here to our browser and we click on the Beatles, you see I get a little alert that says AKA the White Album. So it's actually reading that data from the data-aka attribute and making it available inside of the JavaScript. So as you can imagine, you can do all kinds of things with this. Like, for example, I have this other one, and this is on a button as opposed to an anchor element. It could really be on a span if I wanted it to be, and it would work just fine. And I'll show you that in a minute. But here I've got data missile type, data missile payload, data missile sound, and on-click fire. So click here to fire the missile. And when I click here, I get firing the rocket with photon torpedo payload, kaboom. And you see it's rocket is the type, and payload is photon torpedo, and the sound is kaboom. And so up here in my JavaScript, I'm basically getting all of these missile type, missile payload, missile sound, and I'm putting them all together into this alert string. So as you can imagine, if you had a game or something, you could put all kinds of properties in there. You could change them around in your JavaScript. You can parse them with your JavaScript, and you can do whatever it is that you want to do. You'll also notice something else interesting here, and I did this on purpose so that I could show you this feature. These attributes have hyphens in the name, so it's missile-type, missile-payload, missile-sound. And you'll notice that in the JavaScript, it's in camel case. Missile type with a capital T, missile payload with a capital P, and missile sound with a capital S. As part of the spec, when you use a hyphen in your attribute names, they get converted into camel case in the JavaScript. And that's because hyphens aren't legal as names of properties in JavaScript. And so I did it this way on purpose just to show you. It's also true that these data attributes will work on any element. If I change button here to span, and I'm going to change the close also to span, and I'll save this and I'll reload it here in the browser, you see that now we just have the word fire. It's not a button anymore. And you'll notice that my cursor is not even changing to the pointy cursor. It's just remaining the text cursor. But still, if I click on it, I still get that alert box, because in HTML5, the on-click attribute works for anything. It doesn't actually have to be a button element or a link element or anything like that. And so I still get this firing the rocket with a photon torpedo payload, kaboom. So it takes perhaps a little bit of imagination, but this is obviously a very useful feature. And it's currently supported by the latest versions of all the major browsers. You'll want to have a fallback in case it's not supported by legacy browsers that may be visiting your site. But this could be an exciting feature to experiment with and to implement.